In the late 1960s and early 1970s, African-American artist Avel de Knight created several pen-and-ink drawings to illustrate Thomas Wentworth Higginson's Civil War diary titled Army Life in a Black Regiment. De Knight made these powerful images exactly a century after the author, Colonel Higginson, documented the strength and bravery of black soldiers fighting for their freedom. In Army Life in a Black Regiment, Colonel Higginson recorded his 17-month experience from 1862 to 1864 as commander during the Civil War of the 1st South Carolina Volunteers, which was the Union's first official regiment, originally comprised of escaped slaves from South Carolina and Florida. This book, published in 1870, describes the New England abolitionists' encounters and the lessons he learned from leading the nearly 1,000 black men. Avel de Knight's illustrations of this book, which were never published, convey both the jovial camaraderie and the permeating solitude and sorrow of war as expressed in Army Life in a Black Regiment. In one scene of the book, Higginson observes a group of animated soldiers celebrating the pleasures of relaxation and friendship.
This hut is now crammed with men, singing at the top of their voices in one of their quaint, monotonous, endless Negro Methodist chants, with obscure syllables recurring constantly and slight variations interwoven, all accompanied with a regular drumming of the feet and clapping of the hands. My approach only enlivens the scene. The circle enlarges, louder grows the singing, rousing shouts of encouragement.
But very quickly, joy transforms into distress during a trip up the St. Mary's River in Florida when the 1st South Carolina Volunteers were ambushed at Township Landing.
I made the men fix their bayonets and kneel in the cover of each side of the pathway, and I saw with delight the brave fellows, settling down in the grass as coolly and as warily as if wild turkeys were the only game, dashing off into the dim woods with nothing to charge at but the vanishing tail of an imaginary horse, for we could really see nothing. This zeal I noted with pleasure, and also with anxiety, as our greatest danger was from confusion and scattering.
While passing through a former camp of the rebels in Florida, Higginson and his soldiers are attacked once more.
In the dim smoke, I caught a glimpse of something blacker, raised high in the air like the threatening head of some great gliding serpent. Suddenly there came a sharp puff of lighter smoke that seemed like a forked tongue, and then a hollow report, and we could see a great black projectile hurled into the air, and falling a quarter of a mile away from us in the woods. I did not at once learn that this first shot killed 2 of the main men, and wounded 2 more.
The casualties of war that Higginson described were illustrated by de Knight with noble images of soldiers aiding the fallen and poignant funeral processions accompanied by the somber angel of death.
We had the funerals in the evening. It was very impressive. A dense mist came up, with a moon behind it, and we had only the light of pine splinters as the procession wound along beneath the mighty moss-hung branches of the ancient grove. The groups around the grave, the dark faces, the red garments, the scattered lights, the misty boughs, were weird and strange. I'll lay in the grave and stretch out my arms. Never, it seemed to me, since man first lived and suffered, was his infinite longing for peace uttered more plaintively than in that line.
Higginson's diary of leading African-American soldiers during the Civil War no doubt appealed to the artist, de Knight, who served in a segregated unit of the U.S. Army in World War II. De Knight created his 22 drawings for Higginson's book between 1969 and 1973, a time of continued and intense civil unrest in the United States. De Knight incorporates his wartime experience, along with the turbulent conditions of the U.S.'s early 70s into his illustrations, but with a quiet voice, using subtle and almost romantic imagery to convey the power, authority, and professionalism of a group of African-American Civil War soldiers.
To look back on 20 broad double ranks of men, for they marched by platoons, every polished musket having a black face beside it, and every face set steadily to the front. A regiment of freed slaves marching into the future. It was something to remember.
The essence of Avel de Knight's images are expressed by the closing words of Colonel Higginson.
Till the blacks were armed, there was no guarantee of their freedom. It was their demeanor under arms that shamed the nation into recognizing them as men.